a lot of people know you as a Grammy Award winning artist. A lot of people know you as Bluegrass Player of the Year. I initially heard you for the first time with that Rob Ickes album. I think that was sometime in the mid 2010s when that album came out. Um, Phenomenal, Rob's the Dawn of Dobro, absolutely crazy, and that partnership with you like just seemed like a perfect storm of complementary guitar styles. Were you connected with Rob through your previous musical connections, or how did that relationship start and that musical rapport started to get built?
Kind of funny story because I'd met Rob at the Tennessee Theater in Knoxville, uh, probably 2002, 2003 ish, with Earl. I was sitting in with the band. Rob was in the band, and then he was in a band called Blue Highway, great legendary bluegrass group. And I, through the years, we would play the same festivals or open the show for them. Um, and then probably 2012 or something like that, Blue Highway was working on an album, and they called me in to do a scratch vocal on the record, and something they weren't intending on keeping. It was just going to be something so they could record without having to erase a vocal, and they ended up keeping my vocal on the album. And around that time, Rob just called me kind of out of the blue, and my wife and I were thinking about moving to Nashville, and he was just really great and was just very supportive. And he said, well, when you get to town, give me a call and maybe we'll do some picking. And so it was like 2 weeks later we moved to Nashville, and Rob and I started playing together. Yeah, it's probably 2013. And honestly, it was one of those just strange things because even up until now, I don't think we've like really had to work on too much to like get together and to sort of, like you said, the complementary styles. It just sort of fit. And when we were when I first started picking with him, we just did a show at the Station Inn um, that year, and then we did that first album. It was one of those like Rob was going to do a solo album, but he said, why don't we just do a duo thing? And we did, and then it came out the next January, and then it was nominated for a Grammy, and so that was sort of like the why don't we do this, and because I was kind of working on maybe doing a country record, and it had been a minute since I'd done a solo album, and I just really loved working with him, and so yeah, we had, you know, it's been over 10 years of doing that project,
Mm.
and it's been great. He's just one of my favorite musicians and monster player.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear that it just kind of fit together because it seems that when you look at the great, duos of country music over time, the guitar playing specifically, I think of like Chet Atkins and Jerry Reed right off the bat, just
Yeah,
friends first, musicians second, it seemed. And
yeah.
was that the case with you and Rob? Just kind of clicked?
It definitely was, and it still is. We're still, great buds, and I don't think, it's really, and I can, honestly say, out of 12 years that we've worked together, I don't think either of us have said a crossword to the other, and it's been a great, working relationship, and our families are all friends together, and um, everything just kind of went really smoothly. Like just every record we did, um, just seemed like it just clicked together immediately. I mean, we did 4 albums together. Other than the background vocals, I don't think there's an overdub on any of them. That which is just crazy. I mean, that first record, we didn't. I don't think we even had songs written down that we were going to do. Maybe one or two that we had like, okay, we'll do these. But that whole thing was just kind of like a big jam, and um, so that it's. I think that sort of set the tone for what the duo was.
All right. Well, that's. I don't know if that should inspire me more or just make me give up altogether. That it just kind of happened all together like that. That's definitely going to give me a new appreciation when I listen to the album because yeah,
All
that's
right.
It sounds like, in a sense, where it's kind of like you guys were always just picking up where you left off. It's
Yeah.
continuing the story, which is really cool. And yeah, very complementary music styles. I think, so to talk a little more about your playing, what made, I think, you and Rob so amazing together listening to your guys' music is obviously you guys are known for playing fast. I think that's something all guitar players strive for when they start on the road. They hear some guitar solo that really inspires them, and it's usually something very shreddy.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah.
but when you get to the folk world, and I think this might be still a little underappreciated, the world of flat picking and bluegrass picking is just as difficult, if not more difficult, than some of the heavy metal greats of our time, absolutely like shredding neoclassical licks.
Yeah.
Aside from playing fast, it's the sheer accuracy that absolutely blows my mind. Uh, Listening to Rob do these really fast licks and also playing slide guitar at the same time is incredible. But I listen to you play and I listen to some of the runs that you do, and you're doing a lot of what every bluegrass player has ever done. You open to your G major pentatonics and your very at its core simple shapes and ideas, but you play with a way that sounds like it needs to come out, like you're a steam valve that always is building up too much pressure and it just needs to explode out of you. So the big question I really wanted to ask you was, where did that speed come from? How did you develop it? And if there's people out there, I know there's a huge bluegrass scene in the Black Hills here who are just dying to know, how do they start building up that speed and that accuracy for their own playing?
It's that's a great question, and it's one of those, like, in this world, it is pretty much a necessity. Like if you go to a jam, in a bluegrass setting, there's going to be a lot of fast fiddle tunes, and it's another one of those tale as old as time, or tale as old as the genre. That all those Doc Watson albums, all those Flight and Scruggs albums, all the Tony Rice stuff, there was a lot of up tempo things, and you had to hang. It's like the Doc Watson stuff just blew everybody's mind at that time because nobody was really doing that. It was a lot of strummers in bluegrass, and then here comes Doc doing all these single line melodies things, and that just sort of, again, it just set the tone for everything after. And it's always been a big part of what I wanted to do and what I do. Um, and a lot of it has just been sitting around playing all these fiddle tunes. I mean, vocabulary is so important in this genre because it's you can almost immediately tell who's done the homework and who hasn't, and not that there's anything against it, because there's obviously you got to start from somewhere, and there's bluegrass has kind of always had these moments of popularity where it gets, it starts growing, and I think everybody loves the organicness of it. You just pick up an acoustic guitar. You don't really need anything else, and and you're set. And it's kind of like I played in Texas last weekend, and it came this massive storm, and so our main stage show was just canceled, and so there was a little just kind of shed where some of these people that had been hanging out, that wanted to hear music, were still there, that came out to our show, and so just went over there and played. And I can't think of many other maybe genres that you can do that. It's just it didn't really need anything else. Didn't probably could have used some more amplification, but wasn't necessary. But I think right hand stuff is where the bluegrass thing really excels. Like when you're working on speed, especially, like the left hand, all the shreddy stuff will come with time. But the right hand, like if I ever have times where I need to work on something, it's always my right hand. And so I'll play a lot of, like I said, fiddle tunes, but a lot of cross picking things that I work on quite a bit. I mean, it's a lot of alternate picking, so anything I can do to work on that is typically what I do.
Hmm. Absolutely. Do you find yourself, because again, you play so fast it's sometimes hard to keep up with. One of my former guitar students, who's now my coworker, wondered if when you're going approaching those flat picking licks, are you trying to pick every single note, or do you utilize hammer-ons and pull-offs like as much as the average guitar player? Do you feel?
I don't use them. I don't use them that often. I try to pick every note, um, and I think I don't know necessarily why, and there's nothing wrong with either way. Um, but for me, when I hear, um, it's the sound in my head. It's mostly picked notes, so I'm like, just trying to work on that. And I think that's just always been part of my routine of exercises on my playing has been note clarity and note separation and that kind of thing. And so yeah, I think that's one of the big things is that I work on. I mean, sometimes if it's a triplet run or something, 90% of the notes will be picked, and then there'll be a few utilized, hammer-ons or pull-offs with open strings. Um, but for the most part, I would say a good percentage is all picked notes.
For sure. Well, it seems like a pretty big mountain to climb over for a lot of us humans over here.
Well, it's one of those things. I always just loved this music, and it's this. Talking about electric guitar players, and I think there's a lot of that world that inspires me. I mean, I was a teenager, and a friend of mine that just knew I liked guitar gave me a Van Halen album, and that sort of started this whole other side project, or not side project, but side venture where I was like, I wanted to incorporate that into my playing, that electric stuff. And I got way into the metal world, and still into that. And I'm constantly trying to work on what I can do to, improve my playing or make it more interesting for myself. I'm always my biggest critic. So whatever I can do to appease that for a moment, I'm
Absolutely.
I'm
Well, I
working on
mean,
it.
regardless of how high those mountains are and how big the learning curve may be, the good news is to all of us guitar players out there is that your signature Taylor guitar will probably help them accomplish their dreams, right?
Yes, that's right.
Absolutely.
Comes pre-built with all the notes.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that briefly. So, my fellow guitar nerds out there will know that this is not your first signature guitar model. We all love the Huss and Dalton TDR Trey Hensley model.
Yeah.
But what was the story? How did you get into contact with Taylor and starting designing this? Was this a direct collaboration between you and Andy Powers? Was this an idea you had? Tell me a little bit about the story behind how this guitar came to be.
So, I mean, I've been a big fan of Taylor for years. I guess it started when I moved to Nashville around that time, um, because I really, I hadn't played many Taylors, if any, and it just so happened I was needing to plug in, and so I met a friend that knew some of the folks at Taylor at the time, and they had the showroom in Nashville. I went by there and picked up a 510. Like I said, this is probably 12, 13 years ago, and I loved that guitar, and I still have it, and then I met Andy Powers somewhere around that time, and became friends with him, and have just been a big fan of his, for years as well, and to the point where before the Grand Pacific, I have a prototype of that guitar, and I think it's number two, and maybe Andy's got number one. Um, and I loved those Grand Pacific models and played those for a long time. And then I guess it was last year with the first Gold Label model. Um, they sent me one of those just to test out, and it was an immediate, like, it wasn't my body shape because it's like I think it's a 716 maybe the first Gold Label, and so it's like a mini jumbo, which is not necessarily what I would gravitate towards. But I could definitely hear something that in that guitar that was like really special. And then they sent me a Grand Pacific, uh, prototype, I guess, of the Gold Label, and just it blew my mind how great that guitar is. And and so that sort of got the ball rolling, where it's like, what could we do, that maybe is different, that would be like a signature model. And so Andy and I and Jay Parkin there at Taylor just kind of started spitballing ideas, and it was tough because I had taken that Grand Pacific gold label, and it was kind of my main guitar. Like I just took it on the road and played it at every gig, and I didn't have a lot I wanted to change about it. It just sounded great, and then I think Jay threw out the idea of a square shoulder version of it, and immediately I was kind of like, that's it, because as much as I love the slope shoulder, there's just a little extra oomph that the square shoulder has, and I think that would fit my style better. And
Yeah.
so they sort of immediately sent me a prototype of that, and yeah, I mean, I was like instantly sold. And that's the thing about the gold labels, is that I just think they're probably, I mean, they're the most exciting new guitars I've played, just because they're so well balanced. I mean, everything is just super clear, and it's funny. I'm horrible at describing like what I like about a guitar, but it's funny, just being around Andy, because I think there's definitely a kinship there as well, knowing his background of being into Doc and the bluegrass side of things, and so he knows sort of what I'm listening for, where it clearly sounds like these guitars I've heard all my life, but there's just more. It's like there's more bass response. And there's also, the highs aren't any, they're not so I don't know the words I'm looking for, but everything's more. It's like it's the EQ level. Well, for instance, I went to record my new record, and which will be out sometime next year. Not a plug. This is a different, but
No, let's
you know,
plug
I
that quickly.
I
Ladies
did
and
the
gentlemen,
whole.
listening to this interview, Can't Outrun the Blues is an amazing song. You need to listen to it right now. Pause the interview if you need to. Go listen to it. It's a great hook. It's a great song. It's wonderful. It's a great track.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, but that record, I have my guitars that I always bring, and when you go to the studio, you should always have to bring a bunch of stuff, and because I'm always like, well, this song might need this, and they're different colors in the studio, and I used my gold label on every song, and that's just kind of abnormal. It's like it just fit every scenario, and it played. It sounded, depending on how I hit it, is how it. I don't have any guitars that would do that, and it's a little bit like just talking with Andy. I know he knows all this stuff far more than I do, but it's just there was this magic with these guitars that I hadn't heard in anything else, and so yeah, I was just super stoked to be able to collaborate with them on what ended up being this 510 signature model.
Yes. So yeah, it's the 510 body shape. The model that kind of started it all for you.
Yeah.
Mahogany back and sides. Are you team mahogany over team rosewood typically?
It's funny because I've gone through different eras in my playing, where it's like I prefer rosewood. I think that when I get in, and I do love rosewood. There's no shade thrown at rosewood, but I think mahogany for just an all-purpose guitar. Which when I'm touring, when I'm on the road, I just bring one guitar. So I have to have something that's going to cover all my bases, and I think mahogany does that. And there's just a little bit of that high-end sparkle with a mahogany guitar that rosewood doesn't necessarily squash it, but there's all this mid-range stuff that happens with the rosewood that I think the mahogany just sort of cuts through a lot better. And so that's always kind of been my go-to. I always come back to the mahogany guitars, and
Well, that's amazing. I've always
so yeah, that was one of the things. Like I do want to make sure this is a 510, and go that route.
Yeah. I'm really excited to play it. I've always described mahogany as having a very woody and snappy sound. And I
Yeah.
think for your style of playing, like that's exactly what it needs to sound like. It has that very organic articulation that just, really works for the bluegrass pick, and it has that it gives it that extra, twang, I guess, in a sense that
Yeah.
electric guitar players, kind of have only with the acoustic world. And yeah, I found it funny, listening when you said like, let's see what we can do different when designing this guitar. And it's a little humorous to me how what they ended up doing different is going back to like the quintessential guitar recipe, right? A square shoulder
Yeah.
dreadnought. But you intersect that with Taylor's, hugely innovative technologies. They have not only the V class bracing, but they do the fan V class bracing on these guitars. And hide glue construction is a really big deal too. That's
Yeah.
just gonna, for the longevity of the instrument, really, just allow that thing to sing even more as it continues to be played. But it's funny how they can intersect all of that modern innovation with what an acoustic guitar can be. But when they think about, well, what are we going to do different? Well, a square shoulder dreadnought. It's what uh, players like you have been playing for almost centuries.
Yeah.
It's the acoustic guitar that we think of when we think acoustic guitar music. So I'm
Yeah.
really excited to play it. Um,
I mean, it's a great guitar. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like I'm just super excited to have a guitar, whether it has my name on it or not. That I just feel comfortable taking out and playing at every gig, and that's been the thing with these. Even before the talks of my model. That's just what it was. There was no question. I've got plenty of guitars to choose from, but I would always go back to pick that guitar. And I just left that when I got the prototype of my model, it just stayed in the road case. And then it's funny because I always keep a guitar. Got a tour a bunch. So I always keep a guitar ready to go. And I noticed when I would get home from these tours, I would get the guitar out and make sure that I could play it at home and then put it back in the. And I never did that. It's like I would always just keep a guitar there and didn't worry about playing it when I got home. But I just couldn't wait to get back and play it.
yeah.
It's been very inspiring. And so that's one of the big things about this guitar is that if it had my name on it or if it didn't, it's just been a very inspiring guitar for me. And I'm thankful for that.
Awesome. I mean, I think the term workhorse is thrown around quite a bit in the guitar world, but I
Yeah.
really don't think it can be overstated, like just how a part of your own self your guitar becomes when you've been playing, for so long.
Yeah.
It really does become an extension of your body, and having an instrument that, responds to your playing and follows where you want to go, and you can tell it what you want and it gives you all of it and then some. That's
Yeah.
it's a very important thing to any guitar player, beginner and professional alike. You're going to be playing the darn thing, like it should feel right, it should have a sound that makes you want to play. And
Yeah.
it sounds like they kind of hit the nail on the head for you with this signature, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I am thrilled with it, and like I said, I would feel secondhand pride from it if it didn't have my name on it. It's just a little extra,
Yeah.
icing on the cake that it's my model. And yeah, like I said, I've known Andy and the folks at Taylor for a long time, and so they've been friends, and it's been again a very organic relationship, and which is I'm at the point where it's you can't really get around the organicness of it. It's like acoustic. It's the same as acoustic guitar. You can't really fake that. And so I didn't want to just slap my name on it if it wasn't exciting to me. And I'm honored to have it be my guitar.
I have a lot of respect for that. That's, yeah, signature guitars can, I've played a couple out there in my years of playing that just seemed like, yeah, they just put their name on it. But I think
Yeah,
collaboration is very important.
it
So
is. Yeah, it's
we're
nice to.
we are all really excited to play the guitar when they get here. I think they release to the good old general public on November 18th. I know you're a super busy guy, Trey, so I'm gonna let you get going. Thank you so much for talking to us. Like it's so cool, whether it's for marketing a new guitar or just talking music. Um, I really kind of discovered you on my Instagram algorithm. You would show up and just watching you not only play so fast and so accurately, but you have a smile on your face the whole time you're doing it, which is, I think just adds to the fun of it that you can do these insane runs and very articulate, passages, and you're just kind of just enjoying the heck out of it. So I'm really honored to be able to have sat down and talk with you today. Thank you very much. I
Well, thank
hope
you
you
guys.
come to the Black Hills sometime and kind of revel in the bluegrass and folk scene that's out here. It'd be an honor.
Yes.
Yeah, and you have friends to stay with. We'll take care of you. So,
All right. Well, I appreciate that very much.
well, thank you very much, Trey. You have a good rest of your day, man.
You do the same.
See ya.
See you, man.